All right, it says we're live now. So welcome, everybody. Welcome to WineShark Wednesday. It is I, your host, the WineShark. How is everybody? Welcome to WineShark Wednesday. We are having a great day here. It's so exciting. It's nearly fall. Hooray! A personal favorite season of mine, a very busy season around the wine world. I've been waiting for this, although my lovely North Texas weather is 100% not cooperating with me in fall. It teased us, as usual, a little bit earlier in September with temperatures as low as the high 80s. And we're back to like being in the high 90s again, which kind of is a bummer from the fall feeling. But still, my mindset's way up here. It's falling leaves in cool weather, and we will get there eventually. But I hope you guys are having a wonderful week. We're going to talk about a kind of a grab bag of stuff today. I had all these different topics kind of spinning around. Nothing really grand, fun, and interesting really inspired me, but some interesting news this week. And, of course, the idea that fall brings us to Octoberfest. I actually just got off the phone with my friends who are running Octoberfest. So just to give you a preview, and I'll talk about this again later, Friday night and all day Saturday, yours truly and my friend Bob over at Two Penny Beer will be hosting the VIP tent for beer and wine tasting at Octoberfest at Horace Hall in downtown Fort Worth. Actually, well, the Stockyards of Fort Worth, so north of downtown. Anyway, it's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to have our own little VIP tent. We're going to be serving 5 different beers and 5 different wines that you get for a low price of $30. It's a very casual affair. It's a come and go, show up as you please. You get a punch card to have 5 of each of your choices of whatever it is that we've got. 5 wines, 5 beers. It's going to be a lot of fun. Simple, easy, great way to ring in the fall season. And if you are an Aggie, it is an Octoberfest. The Aggies are joining themselves for their big fight versus Arkansas, and so there's going to be a lot of celebration there, a midnight yell, a lot of kind of just fun stuff, live music, entertainment, food. It's going to be a lot of fun, so I hope you guys are join us, and there's a detailed link for tickets right down below in the description. So I'll remind you of that at the end of the show as well, but for now, on to the weird news of the week. Well, the interesting, sad, and kind of makes you think. This week, Fred Franzia died. Fred Thomas Franzia. And that name might ring a bell for some of you who are in the wine world. Franzia being largely associated with inexpensive box wine. I grew up through most of my life thinking Franzia was a label, not a person. Did not realize that Fred Franzia was indeed was the man behind the label and the inheritor of a family wine business. He was born in 1943, inherited the business eventually, but well, he took over from him and his brother. He took it over from his mother and his brother and started running the business. Eventually, he sold the business off. And he sold it to, of all things, the Coca-Cola Company, who later then sold it off to a company called the Wine Group, which now produces the famous Franzia box wine that we all know. So, interestingly enough, at time of his passing, Franzia, Mr. Fred, didn't own the label Franzia. This is something that I'm finding more and more in the wine world, where a winemaker makes a product that is successful, that goes mainstream, and then their name becomes attached as the brand, and then they dip out and go do something else, either bought out or sold. They sold for themselves. And anyway, it's a very interesting and weird part of the wine world that happens. That also seems to happen in the fashion industry as well. But the idea that Fred was no longer part of that is something that I didn't realize until reading his obituary earlier this week. But the reason I wanted to talk about this, why, other than saying, okay, so you're right, there's a guy who died who made box wine. But Fred was a very interesting figure and a kind of divisive figure within the wine world, in my opinion. First things that we notice about him, of course, is the Franzia label. But he was both a kind of disruptive force as a bad way and a disruptive force as a good way. And I wanted to talk about it a little and get some thoughts in your head so that you guys could think about it. First things first, the bad. After selling his business off, he later started a business called the Bronco Wine Company. And at Bronco, he got kind of a negative reputation for doing some things within the wine industry that are definitely kind of frowned upon by yours truly and by others. Number one, he got charged for mislabeling over 1 million gallons of wine, selling it under a Zinfandel and a Cabernet label when he was actually mixing it with other cheaper grapes. Okay, so we've talked a lot about wine law and about how you have to have 75% or more of a particular type to call it a monovarietal. And he also got popped for the same thing with regionality. He was calling a wine Napa wine, even though it was only bottled in Napa. The grapes that he was using were not grown in Napa, but yet he was calling it Napa wine. And that's an important thing in the fine wine world. The idea that place matters is something I think is important. I think that it's consumer transparency. You should know what's in your wine, and if they're going to call it Cabernet Sauvignon, well, by golly, it better be whatever the FDA slash trade industries agree, which in California's case is 75% or more. So shortcutting these sorts of things to bring a cheap product is not, in my opinion, a good thing. That's definitely his bad side. But on the flip side, he was a strong believer in wine being accessible to the masses. And when we talk about, the grocery store grab and the idea that, I personally believe that wine is both a grocery and a luxury, his responsibility towards bringing wine as a daily drinking product, as a grocery store level or just a American wine drinking up to a level was a passion of his. And that's something that I really believe in. While I truly believe in the fine wine world, and I have plenty of examples of it in my life, I tell you, there's a whole lot more people out there that just drink wine for wine's sake that are not passionate about the product itself. They drink it because they enjoy the beverage, they enjoy the taste, they enjoy what it brings to their lives, whatever. They're not out here like me, geeking, studying out about chemistry and regionality and naming and all the other pedantic shit that comes along with wine as a hobby and as a job. Some people, like I said, just want to drink wine. And with that being said, wine does not have to be expensive to be good. It was one of the very first things that was in my kind of tenets of WineShark, is that's a myth. Now, expensive wine can be amazing, and the fine wine world is very different than the plonk wine, grocery store level wine world. There's definitely a difference in the process and in the quality. That I'm not saying that you don't get what you pay for, but just because you pay doesn't mean you're getting value. And the math, the calculus, if you will, on what you pay for what you get is really, really far off. A $500 bottle of wine is not actually 100 times better, 100 times more pleasing than a $5 bottle of wine. I dare you even to establish the idea of what that particular standard is, since it's a subjective thing anyway. The good news is I can tell you both of them are going to get you drunk just fine, if that's what you're into. So anyway, so let's talk about the good side. If his advocacy for affordable value wine is a good thing, he was the shining star of that, and in a very particular and well-known way. This story has gone so far as to be something about wine legend, and I think I've actually mistold this story and relearned it several times. So for today's show, let's call this the canonical version of what I know right now. That being Charles Shaw's Two Buck Chuck. Charles Shaw was a label that went bankrupt in 1995. Franzia bought up that label, had use of that label, and marketed it to Trader Joe's for the infamous $1.99 or $1.99 price point. This idea of accessibility. Although I have heard now you can find Two Buck Chuck as expensive as $3.99 in some places. Gasp. But the point is, these wines were very much targeted at usable drinkability, throwing it in the face of the big wine producers that you don't have to charge out the ass for this stuff. He also was a big advocate for a concept of $10 wine in restaurants. The idea that Americans would never really be a wine drinking culture unless we got easy, inexpensive wines available in restaurants everywhere. Get a $10 bottle of wine. But unfortunately, that doesn't really jive with the American restaurant concept and the American restaurant stigma around wine. Because again, the fear of inexpensive equals cheap equals low quality equals unenjoyable. Right? There's that thought chain that goes, if it's cheap, it can't be good. Now, there's a lot of plonk out there that is just not good wine. Don't get me wrong. I'm not I'm not keeping a box of Franzia in my refrigerator right now. Okay, it's not really my style. But And I am a firm believer that for spending just a little bit more in the right types of places, you can increase your quality dramatically. So that's a good thing. But I totally believe this idea of getting that $10 bottle of wine at a wholesale level, of getting something that restaurants can sell to you proudly for an inexpensive wine, so that you don't even think about ordering the wine. It's just something that you order, because he points out that it's a really interesting thing to see that there's reticence to pay to have a $10 bottle of wine, and yet bottled water sells briskly at $10. And he was once quoted as saying, "It just goes to show you how stupid Americans can get." And I think that's pretty accurate. The idea that you'd pay $10 for some bottle of water that you have zero idea, precedence, proof of what goes into it. At the very least, it's water that went into a bottle, maybe through a filter, but with no other value add to it whatsoever, except for the fact that it is, it is to be seen. It's chic, it's stylish, it's whatever. So whether you're drinking Perrier or Evian or whatever it is, the fact that you're willing to pay that much for it and not for the same thing in wine, it gives an example of where the price value thing doesn't really jive. And Americans, like I said, in restaurants specifically, just don't go with it. So is he a devil or an angel in this aspect? On the one hand, the idea of cutting corners and making wine as cheap as possible, I don't necessarily think is laudable. But on the other hand, making wine accessible and affordable and drinkable, because there's so many people out there that's all they're ever really going to get out of their wine drinking experience, man. They just want a glass of wine and they want it to be good. And that's great, right? I get introduced to hundreds of customers and students who, that's their jam. The weird part about to me though is that there is the inability or the unwillingness to realize that not all wines are created the same. It's the same thing as saying, yes, a Hyundai and a Ferrari are both cars. Both will get you to places on your commute in very different methods of production. Okay? The differences in these two things, yes, they're cars, but they're different. You should feel no different than that about wine. And so when people proudly proclaim that, well, this is $5 bottle of wine, it's just as good as any 50, I'm like, no, really it isn't. And here's 9 reasons why. And here's how it was made and how the $50 bottle was made and why they're better. And then let yourself be the subjective taste of that. If that's all that you can appreciate, if the Hyundai is all you ever appreciate about the art, then so be it. I'm totally cool with driving the Ferrari, personally. So again, this is one of those weird things where subjectiveness and objectiveness kind of cross over in the Venn diagram. But I really think is an interesting thing. And now that he's gone, I hope that somebody else in the industry takes up that idea of advocating for wine as part of our everyday lives. I think that's still an important part where America has a lot to go. And by the way, this is a thing where the European examples that you're going to see of these inexpensive wines are no better, production-wise, quality-wise, etc., than their American counterparts. There's a sense of scale in a couple of them. We're talking about industrial wine production, but guess what? When we're talking about France and Spain and Italy, they do the same damn thing. I mean, it is not any better to buy a $4 bottle there and somehow think, ooh, it's better. It isn't. It's the same plunk. But it just feels good because you happen to be in France or Germany or Italy and you're from here. So anyway, #NRant. Think about it. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Would love to hear from you. But before we move on to grocery store grabbing and talking about German wines and why German wines are cool, because again, Octoberfest, hooray. Let's do our wine quiz. All right, getting off the front here. Dun, dun, dun. All right, wine quiz today. Check it out. We have Wine Wars. This is what we've been using for our wine trivia sourcing. So we got 5 different categories. Vine to Vino, which is about growing grapes, making wine, and world wine production. We've got the Graposphere, which is about grape varieties, their wines, and their geography. We've got Wine Cellar, which is about selecting, storing, and tasting wine. We've got Wine and Food, which is about cooking with wine, food and wine pairing, and wine service. And then finally, Court Culture, stuff about people, businesses, the arts and sciences, and wine general trivia. So I like to pull these things, and we're going to see if we can't stump the chump, whether yours truly actually knows anything about the wine world here. We did okay last week, I think, but we'd always look for a 5 for 5 here. So other than that, I may also be just teaching people not to play this game with me. So this may be one of those board games that just sits on my shelf like many others. All right, so question number 1. Which vine species produces more than 99% of the world's vine? Vitis lambrusca or Vitis vinifera? All right, which is effectively referred to as the common wine grape? Vitis lambrusca or Vitis vinifera? vinifera. I've always pronounced it vinifera. I don't know why I decided to pronounce it differently this time. But if you did in my class, you guys should know this down pat. Although I've heard the number close to like 96, not 99%. The answer is Vitis vinifera. Yes. Vitis vinifera, it says the wine-bearing vine on the back. When I, pardon me, obstinately breathing in my Riesling. Okay, so one for us. Ding, 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 ding. All right. Next up question is, what treatment is likely to give white wine made from Chardonnay grapes the flavors and aromas of toast, vanilla, or butterscotch? Okay, so what adds aromas of toast, vanilla, or butterscotch to Chardonnay? That is a wine treatment. So, think about those flavors. Think about where they might come from. Remember, aromas come from usually 4 different places. Fermentation, from the grapes themselves, soils, and from oak aging. So, what are these 3 things? One of these 4 things, which do you think would add those styles of flavors? And John is correct. That is oak treatment. Yeah, I saw a fascinating bit on oak staving and cooperage and making oak and how they toast them, and a huge part of the wine industry. Really cool old school traditions, oft misunderstood, and certainly when you do the things right and don't take shortcuts in your oak program, oaking is amazing, and it can add those wonderful elements of toast, vanilla, and butterscotch to your Chardonnay. All right, so that's 2 for us. Ding, ding, ding. True or false? The legs of swirled wine running down the side of the glass indicate quality. Oh, if you've ever been to one of my classes and heard this one go off, you should absolutely know my rant on this. So, true or false? Legs of swirled wine running down the glass indicate the wine's quality. Okay, so what that means is, remember that legs, or tears as we sometimes call them, when you swirl around like this and you see these little rivulets running down the side, those are the wine's legs. Are they an indicator of quality? All right, John says an affirmative false. Didn't even bother to rant it. Their answer is false. Legs are a complicated matter of physics and evaporation rates, not necessarily wine quality. Yay! Yes, wine's legs don't mean anything. They're useful as a tool to identify certain qualities about a wine during blind wine tasting. But other than that, for you, unless you're trying to learn blinds, the average wine drinker, you don't care. It doesn't matter. They have nothing in it. They're an interesting artistic phenomenon. So, all right, we've got the 4th one. So we have 3 for 3. We're doing pretty good. All right, true or false? Wines stand on their own and needn't be served in any particular order at a dinner party. True or false? Wines stand on their own and needn't be served in any particular order at a dinner party. This one almost seems kind of like a gimme, I guess. I don't know. You would have to be pretty ignorant in the wine world to think this one would be, to get this one wrong. So this one here is also false. It's very important that, the general rules to make each bottle shine is young before old, white before red, young, light before full, and dry before sweet. That is actually an excellent rule. That's one of the best rules I've heard here from this game. Usually I shortcut it to intensity. We go from lighter intensity to bigger intensity, just generally speaking. So that tends to include lights before reds. It includes younger before old. But these 4 details I really like. So young before old, white before red, light before full, and dry before sweet. That is a very cool little handy guide there. So 4 for 4. Got one last one. But this is the weird category, which is the catch-all. So this is the trip up. Which master sommelier makes wine more user-friendly in Target stores, on TV, and in her books, DVDs, classes, and website? I think this is basically the question is, can you name a master somm? I have no idea who this master somm might be, but obviously she's a she. So, what do? It is Andrea Immer Robinson. Well, I'm going to have to look up Andrea Immer Robinson and start checking out some of her costs and things, because being a master somm is no small bones there. So Andrea is making it she's making it accessible via TV, DVD, showing up at your Target and buying wine for you, as she says right here. Then definitely very, very cool stuff. So But yeah, I'm definitely going to have to check out Andrea Immer. Proper that. So 4 out of 5. Did not know the famous wine person today, but I will tell you right now, I'm kind of bad at that. I'm not a who's who type, I guess. So, all right. Yeah, same as, just John pointed out, same as the wine tasting. Exactly right. I tend to do that in that order on purpose. So, all right. Last but not least, the grocery store grab. For those of you that are not familiar with the concept, the grocery store grab is our effort to get the best value per dollar for wines found at non-specialty and non-big box retailers. If out of convenience or necessity you shop at the grocery store for your wines, you probably find that you don't have a lot of good wine help. So we really rely on label-focused wine purchasing because reading good labels and having wines that are well labeled can really be a great way to reward wines that tell you what the heck the wine is in the bottle. So we look for things like what's in the bottle by type of grape and where it's grown. We want to know more specific, the better when it comes to where they're grown. And we want to know the common flavor words. What does the wine taste like? We want these flavor words that we understand. We want to use food pairings if possible, especially if they're specific. So today's wine is in honor of Octoberfest and Octoberfest. Although I'm not serving this one specifically at Octoberfest. I'm serving two similar to it. I'm serving Wilhelm Bergman. Wilhelm Bergman and his wonderful Piesporter-Michelsburg Spätlese Riesling from the Mosel. Yeah, that's a lot of long German words, and that is one of the things I find can be kind of intimidating. First things first, I want to shout out at America to get more into German wine. At the grocery store especially, it is really hard to find anything that's actually from Germany, unless you have a pretty extensive grocery store selection. The store that I shop at, this I believe is probably the German wine that I was available to get. And again, this one, this is a great example of how to learn a little bit about wine labeling in Germany, but not necessarily one that I would find the most helpful. On the back label, so you see the front label there, Piesporter-Michelsburg and Spätlese. Those are all big, long German words that don't mean a lot to anybody unless you know what they mean. In this case, that's telling you two things. Piesporter-Michelsburg is where it's from. Spätlese is a level of ripeness, which roughly equates to levels of sweetness, but not always. So don't get too strapped into that. The big name on top, Wilhelm Bergman, and then, of course, his crest and label. Mosel, the tiny thing right there, is actually the overall arching region called the Anbaugebiet. That's the big region that it's from. It would be like saying California. Actually, more like saying, there's not really an American equivalent because Anbaugebiet are not the country overall, or they're not really, but they're like provinces of, so maybe like, saying California. And Piesporter-Michelsburg would be saying like Lodi. And then Riesling is the grape here. Although this Wilhelm Bergman, Piesporter-Michelsburg, is actually a blend of Riesling and Müller-Thurgau. Piesporter-Michelsburgs are kind of the black sheep of the family in this case when it comes to Rieslings, because they are often blended with lower quality grapes or less popular quality grapes, including Sylvaner and Müller-Thurgau. They also, some of them are use the process called chaptalization to increase their ABV level because they have ripeness issues when they're in that northern clime. That's not as common today as it used to be, so I would not go stressing over the idea of it being low quality if you like this. Now this is I said price point wise, this is a $10 bottle of wine, $10.99, $11. So $11 bottle of Riesling, right about the low end of where we want to be on our kind of price quality point. But on the back label here, it says Wilhelm Bergman 2020 Piesporter-Michelsburg Riesling Spätlese. This is one of the great favorites of the Middle Mosel and comes from vineyards around the town of Piesporte. Spätlese grapes are fully ripened to give a full, complex, fresh, fruity sweetness. This wine will pair nicely with spicy foods. Okay, so they're like halfway there here, right? They tell us what Spätlese means. They're fully ripened grapes to give full, complex, and they say fresh and fruity, but they don't tell us what type of fruits. Okay, this is where I think they'd be help. They could use the words green apple and pear and the nice little aromas of white flowers and slate that come off this wine. Okay, this is where they missed. This is a missed opportunity. And then this wine will pair nicely with spicy foods. It's a little general, but a really actually one of the better examples I've seen, at least of being general, because well, it tells you a functional style, not just a style of food. It doesn't say it's good with steaks or burgers or pasta. It specifically talks about the way that a food tastes, spicy, piquant, or hot. Because guess what? Why is this awesome with spicy foods? 2 reasons. 1, it's cool, cold, and slightly sweet. Also, it is only, I'm going to say 7 to 10, but I say 10% ABV, I'm going to guess, based on tasting it. But it may be even lower than that. 8.5 alcohol by volume. 8.5 ABV. That means that there's not a lot of alcohol heat on your tongue and helps cool the flames of spicy foods. This is a great example for blackening and blackened foods. Blackened spices is one of the things I love with it. It's fun with Asian style foods, especially Thai food that gets spicy. If you like into green curry and all that, like I am, or any kind of, it's very good. John asked the question, isn't Spätlese basically late harvested? No, that's Auslese. That's the next level up. So you go Trocken, Spätlese is standard ripeness, Auslese is late harvest. Then Trockenbeeren, Auslese, and Eiswein. So, but yes, good question, and you're very close. This is with the 6 different levels. It is, it's kind of geeky to remember all of them. But Cabernet is the lowest. Spätlese, Auslese, Beeren Auslese, Trockenbeeren Auslese, and Eiswein. I missed a level there a minute ago. Anyway, okay, so let's talk about this wine. Again, label-wise, I'd give this probably a C plus B, maybe C plus B minus, right? I like that food pairing, but I want to know more flavor words. Flavor words. That's the key thing, I think, for most, because especially when we're talking about wines that have a non-romance language on the label. Most of us in American schools, at least west of the Mississippi that I know of, Spanish and French are very common. German is not very common except in a few pocket communities. And geeks like myself did not take those in high school, and so therefore the language can become very intimidating. And the front of this label, for instance, if you don't recognize the grape called Riesling, all of this is just right over your head. So this definitely needs that assistance, that nice bright shining star to say, this tastes like these good things. You should try one. Okay, so. The good news is, just from trying this before, this is, color-wise, it is a nice pale straw color. It's got the beautiful determinant hint of slate that often comes with Mosel Rieslings. It doesn't have the TDN, that diesel smell, that petrochemical rubber smell that you sometimes get, which is nice because, well, at this level of Riesling, I don't know that would necessarily be appreciated. Some new users might find that to be like, hey, why is it? This is a bug, not a feature. But the aromas of white flower, pear, golden apple, maybe green, not quite green apple. This one smells a little sweeter, so to me I would say gold or Honeycrisp. On the palate front, this is that mid-palate, semi-sweet style of wine. This is an off-dry style. It's that 15 grams per liter, 35 grams per liter. It tastes like biting into an apple. So the sweetness that you get from fruit, this is there. Now, I am adamant about this. People go, I don't like Riesling, it's too sweet. Well, Riesling doesn't always come in the sweet style. This one happens to be so, but there are lots of dry Rieslings out there. Don't write off Riesling if you don't like sweet wines. And by the way, I wouldn't even rate this as a sweet wine. This is barely a hint of sweet. This is delightfully sweet. This is not nearly as sweet as a simple soda. Like a Coca-Cola, we always use that example, 150 grams per liter. This is about a fifth of that. So this is nice, light, refreshing. That sweetness is a beautiful counterpart for foods, as I said, especially spicy foods. This for $11, this isn't a complicated Riesling, but man, you should be drinking more of this and less poorly made, big popular wines from certain labels and other grapes. And I get Chardonnay is popular. I love Chardonnay, don't get me wrong, but there are a lot worse Chardonnays at $11 than this Riesling is at $11. This is much more refreshing and fun. Again, everything has its purpose and its place. That's my opinion, maybe not yours, but telling you, man, underrated. And if you are in the mood to have, this is also what's great for down here in Texas because it's still hot. This is still a great wine. It's a great wine for summer and hot weather and fall. It's going to be awesome out at Octoberfest. I'm going to be serving 2 different styles of Riesling. We're going to delve into some rosés. I've also got some, if you said other white wines from Germany that you may have never heard of or may have never tried, we're going to have, I think I've got a Sylvaner. And then we've got some Pinot Noir Rosé, of course, because, we need to have some Pinot Noir Rosé because Pinot Noir is fun, but red wines in Germany are always an interesting challenge. So the cool part is we're gonna explore with it ourselves, and we're gonna get you guys to really enjoy just what if you can't make a fully ripened big bold red wine, why not turn it into rosé? Because that stuff's good. So I hope to see you guys there. As I said, Octoberfest is at Horace Hall Friday night from 5 p.m. to midnight, and then Saturday all day. It's also going on Sunday, but I will be there Friday night and all day Saturday. Come out to the VIP tent, grab a ticket, get some wine, hang out with Bob and I, and enjoy listening to the Oompa music and celebrating the coming of fall because, well, I am quite pleased that it is here, and if you are not. So, until next time, guys, if you guys like what you see here, like and share with a wine-loving friend. Hit that like button down below. Subscribe to the channel. If you really like what we're doing, check us out over on Patreon. And more importantly, come join us at one of our live events. Go on WineShark.com, schedule yourself a private tasting. The fall is filling up very quick. I'm still waiting on word from the Reunion Tower on whether we're going to be in there or not. And I will let you know as other live events come up. But we'd love to see you guys out in public to raise a glass together. So until next time, I have been your Wine Shark. Cheers. Of course, now I have to find myself some spicy food. All right. Good night, all.